The garage smelled like motor oil and old regrets when I found myself cleaning my sniper rifle for the first time in 3 years. Not because I planned to use it, hell no, but because some habits die harder than the men you've put in the ground overseas. The familiar weight of the Barrett 50 cal in my hands brought back memories I'd rather forget, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like war was coming home. "Dad?" Eli's voice cracked through the silence like a gunshot. My 11-year-old son stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Why did Armin hit me? Mom told me not to tell you, but..." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I set the rifle down carefully, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest like a pressure cooker. "Come here, buddy." Eli rushed into my arms, and I could feel him trembling. A red welt marked his left cheek, fresh, maybe an hour old, the kind of mark that comes from an open palm, delivered with intent. "Tell me exactly what happened," I said, keeping my voice calm. 20 years of military training taught me that panic spreads faster than wildfire, and kids pick up on it first. Mom was doing her yoga thing with Armin in the living room, and I asked if I could watch TV. Armin told me to get lost, but I said it was my house too. That's when he hit me and said if I told you, something bad would happen to Mom. I felt something snap inside my chest. Not break, but realign, like a dislocated joint popping back into place. The Victor Hale who'd been trying to be a good civilian, a patient husband, a understanding father, that guy just took a back seat. The Marine was driving now. "Go to your room, Eli. Pack a bag with clothes for 3 days." "Are we going somewhere?" "Yeah, buddy. We're going to Grandma's house upstate. You remember the way, right?" He nodded and scampered off. Smart kid. He knew when to ask questions and when to just follow orders. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Detective Ray Price's number. Ray and I had served 2 tours together in Afghanistan before he came home and joined the local police force. If anyone would understand what I was feeling right now, it was him. "Vic, it's almost midnight, man. Everything okay?" "Ray, I need you to come over. Bring your camera." "Jesus, what happened? You sound like you're about to do something stupid." "Maybe I am, but first I need documentation." 30 minutes later, Ray was photographing the welt on Eli's face while my son gave his statement. Professional, by the book, everything admissible in court if it came to that. "This is serious stuff, Vic," Ray said after Eli went to bed. "You want to press charges?" "Not yet, but I want options." Ray studied my face in the dim kitchen light. "You've got that look, brother. The same one you had before that night in Kandahar when those insurgents took out Martinez. This is different. Is it? Because last time you had that look, 3 enemy combatants ended up in body bags, and you spent 6 months in therapy." I poured 2 glasses of bourbon, the good stuff, the bottle Nina had bought me for our anniversary last year, back when she still pretended to give a damn about our marriage. "Tell me about Armin," I said. Ray sighed and accepted the drink. "Armin Dufresne. 27, owns that New Age wellness center downtown, teaches yoga, sells supplements, probably moves a little weed on the side, though we've never caught him. Clean record otherwise." "Why?" "He's sleeping with my wife." Ray nearly choked on his bourbon. "Vic, are you sure?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken over the past month. Nina leaving Armin's studio at odd hours, their hands touching during private sessions, the way she'd started dressing differently, acting differently, lying about where she'd been. "Shit, man, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, be useful. What else do you know about him?" Ray was quiet for a long moment, staring into his glass. "There have been complaints. Nothing official, but whispers. Some of his female students say he gets too hands-on during adjustments. A couple mentioned he offers special tantric healing sessions for extra money. And Nina's been taking private sessions for 3 months. Vic, what are you planning?" I finished my bourbon and looked at my friend. Really looked at him. Ray had kind eyes, the sort that still believed in justice and happy endings. I'd lost that optimism somewhere between my 3rd deployment and my first marriage counseling session. I'm planning to be very, very careful. The next morning, I dropped Eli off at my mother's house 2 hours upstate, telling her Nina and I needed some time to work through our problems. Mom didn't buy it. She'd raised 4 boys and could smell bullshit from orbit, but she didn't push. Military families understand that sometimes the details come later. When I got back home, Nina was in the kitchen making her usual breakfast. Greek yogurt with organic berries and a protein smoothie that cost more than most people's lunch. She looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment I saw guilt flash across her face. "Where's Eli?" "Safe." "What's that supposed to mean?" I sat down across from her at the kitchen table, The same table where we'd planned our wedding, discussed buying this house, talked about having more kids. Now it felt like a negotiation table in a war zone. It means I know about Armin. Nina's spoon clattered against her bowl. I don't know what you're talking about. The private sessions, the late-night meditation workshops, the way you've been coming home smelling like sandalwood and lies. You're being paranoid, Victor. Just because you can't handle civilian life doesn't mean you get to project your problems onto me. There it was, the deflection, the gaslighting, the way she turned my PTSD into a weapon against me. I'd fallen for it before. Let her make me feel like the broken one, the problem that needed fixing. Not anymore. Show me your phone. Excuse me? Your phone, Nina. If there's nothing to hide, show me your messages with Armin. She stood up abruptly, smoothing down her yoga pants. I don't have to prove anything to you. You're the one with trust issues. And you're the one who told our son to lie about getting hit by your boyfriend. Nina's face went pale. He told you? He told me everything. The hitting, the threats, the way you've been letting another man discipline our child while you play house with him. It wasn't like that. Wasn't like what? Wasn't like adultery? Wasn't like child abuse? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like both. Nina grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I don't have to listen to this. You're having another episode. Walk out that door, and I file for divorce and full custody today. She stopped, hand on the doorknob. You wouldn't. Try me. For a moment, we stared at each other across the kitchen, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now sizing each other up like enemy combatants. Nina broke first. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Armin. Yes, we're in love. And yes, I want a divorce. And hitting Eli? That was an accident. Eli was being disrespectful, and Armin was just trying to... Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop talking. Nina's expression shifted from defensive to something approaching concern. Maybe she finally recognized the look Ray had mentioned, the one that said I was done playing by civilian rules. Victor, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Because the man who's been trying to save this marriage for the past year, he's gone. And the one who's left doesn't give a damn about your feelings. I stood up and walked past her toward the stairs. Pack your things, be out by tonight. You can't kick me out of my own house. Watch me. That afternoon, I sat in my truck outside Armin's Wellness Center, studying the building like I was planning an assault, which, in a way, I was. The place looked exactly like what it was, a converted warehouse in the artsy part of downtown, painted in calming earth tones with a sign promising inner peace through movement in flowing script. Through the large windows, I could see about 15 people in various yoga poses following Armin's lead. He moved like a dancer, all fluid grace and practiced spirituality, handsome in that way that made middle-aged women feel young again with his man bun and designer workout clothes. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. We need to talk. Meet me at Armin's studio at 7 p.m. I texted back, okay. But I had no intention of waiting until 7. At 6:30, I walked into the wellness center wearing my best civilian clothes, khakis and a polo shirt that made me look like any other suburban dad picking up his wife from yoga class. The evening session was winding down, and most of the students were rolling up their mats and chatting about their weekend plans. Armin noticed me immediately. He was younger than I'd expected, with the kind of smooth confidence that comes from never having been truly tested. When our eyes met across the studio, I saw him recognize me from Nina's photos, saw him calculate whether I was there to make a scene. Victor! Nina's voice was artificially bright, the tone she used when she was trying to control a situation. You're early. Traffic was light. Armin approached us with his arms spread in what I supposed was meant to be a welcoming gesture. You must be Nina's husband. I'm Armin. I've heard so much about you. He extended his hand for a shake. I looked at it for a moment, the same hand that had struck my son, then met his eyes instead. I'm sure you have. The silence stretched uncomfortably as the last few students filtered out of the studio. Nina fidgeted with her water bottle, and Armin's confident smile began to waver. So, Armin said, Nina tells me you two are working through some challenges. I want you to know that I respect the sanctity of marriage, and I've been encouraging Nina to... Stop! Armin blinked. Excuse me? Stop talking. Stop pretending. Stop acting like you're anything other than a predator who targets vulnerable women and hits children. Now wait just a minute. I stepped closer, close enough that Armin had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. Did you hit my son? That was a misunderstanding. Did you hit my 11-year-old son? Armin glanced at Nina, looking for backup, but she was staring at the floor. Look, man, kids need boundaries. Your son was being disrespectful, and sometimes... I grabbed Armin by the front of his organic cotton t-shirt and lifted him onto his toes. For all his yoga flexibility, he felt surprisingly fragile in my hands. Victor, stop! Nina rushed toward us, but I held up my free hand without taking my eyes off Armin. Stay back, Nina. The adults are talking. Armin's face was turning red, but I wasn't choking him, just making a point about the difference between his strength and mine. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stay away from my son. And if I ever see you within 100 yards of either of them again, I'm going to introduce you to some of the boundary-setting techniques I learned in the Marines. I released him, and he stumbled backward, gasping and smoothing his shirt. You can't threaten me. I'll call the police. Go ahead. My buddy Detective Price would love to hear about your extracurricular activities with married women and your pharmaceutical side business. Armin's eyes widened. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the complaints from your female students. Just like you don't know about the camera I installed in my living room 3 weeks ago. That last part was a bluff, but Armin didn't know that. I watched the red liquid drain from his face as he processed the implications. Victor, please, Nina said. This isn't how adults handle things. I turned to look at my wife, really look at her. She was still beautiful at 30, still had the dancer's posture that had first caught my attention at a coffee shop 7 years ago. But there was something different in her eyes now, something hard and calculating that I'd never seen before. You're right, Nina. Adults handle things through lawyers and custody hearings and evidence presented in court. Children handle things by running away and hiding behind their boyfriends. I'm not hiding behind anyone. Then prove it. Come home. End this. Choose your family. For a moment, I thought she might actually do it. I saw her waver, saw the woman I'd married flickering behind the stranger she'd become. Then Armin stepped up beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. Nina doesn't have to choose anything, he said. She's free to make her own decisions. And I'm free to make mine. I walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at them. They stood together in the middle of the empty studio, surrounded by mirrors that reflected their image from every angle. They looked like what they were, two people who'd convinced themselves that their selfishness was actually enlightenment. Enjoy each other, I said, because after tonight, you're going to need all the inner peace you can get. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long time, watching them through the windows as they talked in urgent, animated voices. Nina kept gesturing toward the door, probably urging Armin to call the police. But he was shaking his head, and I could read his lips well enough to catch the word camera several times. My phone rang. Detective Price. Vic, I just got a call about a disturbance at the wellness center. Please tell me you didn't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Did you assault anyone? I had a conversation with my wife and her boyfriend. No one was injured. Ray sighed. Where are you now? Sitting in my truck, contemplating the philosophical implications of adultery and child abuse. That's not funny, man. Armin Dufresne called in a threat complaint. Says you grabbed him and made terroristic threats. Did he mention the part where he hit my son? He says that's a lie. Good thing I have photographs and a witness statement. There was a long pause. Vic, come down to the station. Let's talk this through before it gets out of hand. It's already out of hand, Ray. Has been for months. I'm just catching up. I hung up and started the truck. In the rearview mirror, I could see Nina and Armin still talking, still planning, still thinking they were in control of the situation. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up alone in the house Nina and I had bought together in the bed we'd shared for 6 years. She'd come by sometime after midnight to collect her things. I'd heard her moving around downstairs, opening and closing drawers, whispering into her phone. I didn't go down to confront her. That phase was over. Instead, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists. Nina's weaknesses, Armin's vulnerabilities, the network of friends and supporters who enabled their behavior, the business relationships that kept them afloat. By the time I finished my second cup of coffee, I had a plan. Step 1 was already in motion. The photographs Ray had taken of Eli's injuries were now part of an official police report. The child abuse complaint would follow Nina wherever she went, creating a paper trail that would be very difficult to explain away in divorce court. Step 2 required a phone call to Nina's biggest yoga sponsor, a local health food chain called Pure Living that had been featuring her in their advertisements for the past year. The owner, Margaret Chen, was a devout Catholic with strong opinions about family values and moral behavior. Mrs. Chen, this is Victor Hale, Nina's husband. I'm calling because I thought you should know about some developments in Nina's personal life that might affect her ability to represent your company's values." The conversation was brief and professional. I didn't need to embellish or exaggerate. The facts spoke for themselves. Nina was having an affair with a man who hit children and possibly dealt drugs. The police were investigating. There were photographs. Mrs. Chen thanked me for the information and assured me that Pure Living would be reviewing their endorsement relationships immediately. Step 3 involved a visit to Big Lena's boxing gym, where I'd been training since coming home from my last deployment. Lena Kowalski was 65 years old, built like a refrigerator, and had been running the gym for 30 years. She'd seen every type of human drama play out in her establishment, and she had opinions about all of it. "Your wife's screwing around?" she asked after I explained the situation. "Among other things." "And this yoga boy hit your kid?" "Left a mark?" Lena nodded grimly and wrapped my hands for heavy bag work. "What do you need?" "Information. Armin's been coming in here sometimes, trying to poach clients for his wellness center. What do you know about him?" "Know he's got soft hands and a big mouth. Know he likes to brag about his conquests when he thinks no one's listening. Know he's been selling pills to some of the soccer moms who come to his classes." I started working the heavy bag, letting each punch carry some of the rage I'd been bottling up for months. "What kind of pills?" "Adderall, mostly. Some Oxy. Nothing major, but enough to get him in trouble if someone made a call to the right people." "Someone like Detective Price?" "Someone exactly like Detective Price." I spent 2 hours at the gym, working out the kinks in my body and the knots in my mind. By the time I left, I felt centered in a way I hadn't since coming home from Afghanistan. I had a mission again, an objective, a target that deserved what was coming. That evening, I was cooking dinner when my phone rang. Nina's number. "Victor, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Pure Living dropped me today. They said someone called them with lies about my personal life." "That's unfortunate. Don't play dumb. I know it was you." I stirred the pasta sauce and considered my response. "Nina, you made choices. Choices have consequences. I didn't create this situation. I'm just making sure everyone has accurate information about it." "You're trying to destroy my career." "Your career was built on selling yourself as a family-oriented wellness expert. If that image doesn't match reality, maybe the problem isn't with the people pointing it out." "This is about revenge, isn't it? You can't handle that. I found someone who actually makes me happy." I turned off the stove and gave her my full attention. "This is about our son, coming home with bruises and being told to lie about it. Everything else is just details. Armin didn't mean to hurt Eli. He was just trying to establish boundaries. By hitting an 11-year-old child. You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You chose a man over your son. Now you're choosing him over your career, your reputation, and your marriage. That's your right, but don't expect me to make it easy for you." There was a long silence. When Nina spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I can play too. I've been documenting your behavior for months, Victor. The mood swings, the paranoia, the way you clean your guns when you're angry. Any family court judge will see that you're an unstable veteran who shouldn't have custody of a child." "Good luck with that." "I'm serious. I have witnesses who'll testify about your violent tendencies." "What witnesses? Armin? The guy who's about to be arrested for drug dealing?" Another silence. Longer this time. "What are you talking about?" "Check the news tomorrow morning, Nina, and maybe start looking for a new boyfriend." I hung up and finished cooking dinner. Pasta with meat sauce, Eli's favorite. I made enough for two, even though he wasn't there to eat it. Old habits. The next morning's headlines were everything I'd hoped for. Local wellness guru arrested in drug sting. The article was brief but damning. Acting on an anonymous tip, police had searched Armin's studio and found significant quantities of prescription drugs, along with evidence of distribution to clients. Armin's mugshot showed him looking considerably less zen than usual. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Nina, over and over, but I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to the police station to give my statement about Eli's assault. Ray met me in the lobby, looking tired and conflicted. "You know I had to follow up on the tip about Armin's drug dealing," he said as we walked to his office. "Of course. You're a good cop. And you know I can't ignore evidence of a crime, even if it comes from someone with personal motivations." "I would never ask you to." Ray sat down behind his desk and studied me across the cluttered surface. "Vic, I've known you for 15 years. I've seen you in combat, seen you under pressure, seen you make decisions. But this feels different. How so? In Afghanistan, we had rules of engagement, clear objectives, defined enemies. This thing with Nina and Armin, it's messier. Civilians get hurt in messy situations. I leaned back in my chair and considered his words. Ray was right, of course. Military operations had structure, oversight, accountability. What I was doing now was more like guerrilla warfare. Improvised, personal, with collateral damage that was hard to predict or control. Eli's not collateral damage, I said finally. He's the mission. And Nina? Nina made her choice. Ray filled out the paperwork for Eli's assault complaint in careful, precise handwriting. When he finished, he looked up at me with something that might have been pity. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. But be careful, brother. The line between justice and revenge is thinner than most people think. Maybe, but I know which side I'm on. That afternoon, I picked up Eli from my mother's house. He was quiet during the drive home, staring out the window at the familiar landscape of our small Maine city. When we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke. Is Mom coming back? I don't know, buddy. She's made some choices that make it hard for us to be a family right now. Because of Armin? Partly, yeah. Eli nodded solemnly. I saw the news about him getting arrested. Does that mean he won't hit me anymore? The casual way he said it, like getting hit was just a normal part of his life now, made something twist in my chest. No one's ever going to hit you again, Eli, I promise. What if Mom wants me to live with her and Armin? I pulled into the garage and turned off the engine. That's not going to happen. How do you know? I looked at my son, really looked at him. He had Nina's eyes but my stubborn chin, and right now he looked older than his 11 years. The innocence that should have protected him for a few more years had been stripped away by adult choices and adult failures. Because I won't let it happen. That evening, while Eli did homework at the kitchen table, I sat in my home office reviewing the financial documents I'd been gathering for the past month. Nina had been sloppy with money, using our joint accounts to fund her new lifestyle without thinking about the paper trail she was creating. Expensive dinners with Armin, hotel rooms for their retreats, payments to his wellness center for services that weren't listed on any official receipt. It painted a clear picture of a woman who'd been planning her exit strategy for months while lying to her husband and son. More importantly, it showed that she'd been using marital assets to support her affair, a fact that would be very relevant in divorce proceedings. I was organizing the bank statements when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. A. Armin. Probably calling from jail, or maybe he'd made bail already. Either way, he was reaching out, which meant he was desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. I texted back, I'm listening. Meet me at the diner on Route 9. 1 hour. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to tell everyone that you planted those drugs in my studio. I stared at the message for a long moment, then started laughing. It was a good bluff, the kind of desperate play I might have tried in his position. But it had one fatal flaw. It wasn't true, and he couldn't prove it. See you in an hour, I texted back. The diner on Route 9 was the kind of place that served coffee strong enough to wake anyone and pie that could fix a broken heart. It was also neutral ground, public enough that Armin wouldn't try anything stupid, isolated enough that we could talk without interruption. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a booth in the back corner where I could watch the entrance. Armin showed up exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept since his arrest. His man bun was disheveled, his usually pristine clothes wrinkled and stained. He slid into the booth across from me without invitation. You look terrible, I said. Thanks to you. Thanks to your life choices. I just made sure people knew about them. The waitress came over and we both ordered coffee. When she left, Armin leaned across the table, his voice low and urgent. I know you set me up. I know you planted those drugs. Prove it. I don't have to prove it. I just have to say it. Create reasonable doubt. Make people wonder if the angry veteran with PTSD might have gone too far to get revenge on his wife's boyfriend. I sipped my coffee and studied his face. That's not a bad strategy, actually. Play the victim, make me the villain. Problem is, you actually were dealing drugs. Small amounts, personal use mostly. Tell it to the judge. Armin sat back in the booth, his bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. What do you want, Victor? Money? For me to stay away from Nina? What's it going to take to make this stop? I want you to disappear. What do you mean? Leave town, tonight. Don't come back. Don't call Nina, don't text her, don't send her postcards from whatever enlightened commune you end up in. Just vanish. I can't do that. My business, my life, it's all here. Your business is about to be shut down by the DEA. Your life is about to become a series of court dates and legal bills. I'm offering you a chance to start over somewhere else. And if I refuse, I pulled out my phone and showed him a video file. Then I released this to the local news. The video was grainy security footage from the wellness center's parking lot, showing Armin accepting cash from a woman I recognized as one of the town's prominent soccer moms. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. Where did you get this? I have friends in the security business. Amazing what people will do for a case of beer and a story about their buddy's cheating wife. Armin stared at the phone screen, watching his career and reputation crumble in real time. You're destroying my life. You destroyed mine first. I'm just returning the favor. What about Nina? You're hurting her too. Nina made her choice. She chose you over her family. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I put the phone away and stood up, leaving a $5 bill on the table for the coffee. 24 hours, Armin. After that, the video goes public, and I start making phone calls to every wellness center, yoga studio, and New Age retreat from here to California. Your reputation will follow you wherever you go. I was almost to the door when he called after me. Victor. I turned back. What if I told you Nina was planning to take Eli and disappear? What if I told you she's been talking about moving to California, changing her name, starting over where you can't find them? For a moment, everything went very still. The background noise of the diner faded away, and all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. Is that true? Armin's smile was ugly and desperate. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to get under your skin. Guess you'll have to figure out which one. I walked back to the booth and sat down across from him again. When I spoke, my voice was very quiet. If you're lying, you just made a serious mistake. If you're telling the truth, you just made a worse one. What do you mean? I mean that threatening to help someone kidnap my son just moved you from inconvenience to enemy combatant, and I have a very different set of rules for enemy combatants. Armin's face went pale. I didn't threaten anything. I just said, you just said my wife is planning to commit a felony and you're involved. That makes you an accessory to attempted kidnapping. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say it again. Tell me about Nina's plan to take Eli and disappear. I'm not saying anything else. Then we're done here. I stood up again, but this time Armin didn't call after me. He just sat in the booth, staring into his coffee cup like it might contain the answers to all his problems. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long time, thinking about what Armin had said. Was it true? Was Nina really planning to run with Eli? Or was it just a desperate attempt to rattle me? Either way, I couldn't take the chance. I called Ray. I need a favor. Jesus, Vic, what now? I need you to put a flag on Nina's passport, and Eli's. On what grounds? Suspected parental kidnapping. I have reason to believe she's planning to leave the state with our son without permission. There was a long pause. What kind of reason? The kind that came from her boyfriend during a recorded conversation 20 minutes ago. Shit, Vic, this is getting out of hand. It's been out of hand since she let another man hit our son. I'm just making sure it doesn't get worse. Ray sighed deeply. Send me the recording. I'll see what I can do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Eli, about Nina, about the choices that had led us to this point. Somewhere along the way, the woman I'd married had become a stranger, and the life we'd built together had become a battlefield. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my home office to work on divorce papers. If Nina was planning to run, I needed to be ready with custody motions, restraining orders, and every legal weapon I could muster. I was deep in paperwork when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I could see Nina's Toyota pulling up to the house. She sat in the car for a long time, talking on her phone, gesturing animatedly. Finally, she got out and walked to the front door. I met her in the foyer. We need to talk, she said. It's 3 a.m. I know what time it is. I also know what you did to Armin. What I did was protect our son from a drug dealer who likes to hit children. Nina's face was flushed with anger, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. You planted those drugs. You set him up. Prove it. I don't have to prove it. I know you, Victor. I know how your mind works, how you plan things, how you destroy people who get in your way. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her face in the dim light from the porch lamp. If you know me so well, Nina, then you know I'm just getting started. What's that supposed to mean? It means you have a choice to make. You can end this now, come home, be a mother to your son, try to rebuild what we had, or you can keep playing games with men who hit children and sell drugs to soccer moms. I love him. You love the idea of him, the excitement, the rebellion, the way he makes you feel young and desirable, but love, real love, that's what you had with me, and you threw it away for a fantasy. Nina's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from sadness or rage. You don't understand. You came back from Afghanistan different, cold, distant, like you were still fighting a war that was over. Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. That's not my fault. No, it's not. But hitting our son is, and lying about it is, and planning to run away with him is. Nina's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Armin told me about California, about the new identities, the fresh start, the plan to disappear with Eli. That's not... We weren't... Save it, Nina. I've already talked to the police. There's a flag on your passport and Eli's. If you try to leave the state with him, you'll be arrested for kidnapping. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind racing, calculating, looking for an angle or an escape route. You can't do this. I just did. I'll fight you in court. I'll tell them about your PTSD, your violence, your obsession with weapons. No judge will give custody to an unstable veteran. Maybe, but they definitely won't give it to a woman who's sleeping with a drug dealer and planning to flee the state, especially not when there's documented evidence of child abuse. Nina's composure finally shattered completely. She started crying. Not the elegant tears of a wronged woman, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone who just realized how badly they'd miscalculated. Please, Victor, don't do this. We can work something out. We could have worked something out 6 months ago, or 3 months ago, or last week. But you chose Armin. You chose lies. You chose everything except your family. I made mistakes. You made choices. And now you get to live with them. I opened the front door and stepped aside. Go home, Nina. Pack your things. Find a lawyer. Because tomorrow morning I'm filing for divorce and full custody, and this gets official. She walked past me toward the door, then stopped and looked back. I never meant for it to happen like this. I know, but it did. After she left, I sat in my living room until dawn, watching the sun come up over the neighborhood where Eli and I would build our new life together. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was better than the lie we'd been living. At 7 a.m., I made coffee and called my lawyer. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, court filings, and tense negotiations. Nina hired a good attorney, better than I'd expected she could afford, but the facts were on my side. The documented abuse, the drug-dealing boyfriend, the planned flight from the state, it all painted a clear picture of a woman who'd put her own desires ahead of her child's welfare. Armin, meanwhile, had taken my advice about leaving town. His wellness center was closed, his apartment empty, his social media accounts deleted. He'd vanished as completely as if he'd never existed, leaving behind only a stack of legal problems and a woman who'd sacrificed everything for him. Nina tried to fight the custody arrangement, but her heart wasn't in it. Without Armin's support, and with her reputation in ruins, she seemed to deflate like a balloon losing air. She agreed to supervised visitation and moved into a small apartment across town. The divorce was finalized on a gray October morning that felt like the end of one war and the beginning of peace. I walked out of the courthouse with full custody of Eli, ownership of our house, and most of our assets. Nina got her freedom and the consequences that came with it. That evening, Eli and I went to dinner at his favorite restaurant, a family place that served burgers and milkshakes and didn't care about organic anything. We sat in a booth by the window, watching the early snow fall on the parking lot. "Dad?" Eli said around a mouthful of French fries. "Yeah, buddy? Are you happy?" I thought about the question for a long time. Happy wasn't the right word for what I felt. Satisfied, maybe? Complete. Like I'd finished a mission that had taken everything I had to complete. "I'm proud of us," I said finally. "We went through something really hard, and we came out the other side together." "What about Mom? What about her? Do you think she's happy?" I looked out the window at the snow, thinking about Nina in her empty apartment, thinking about the choices that had led her there. I think she's learning that happiness and excitement aren't the same thing, and that sometimes when you chase after something new, you lose something irreplaceable. Eli nodded solemnly and went back to his burger. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a clean white blanket that made everything look fresh and new. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 3 months later, I was coaching Eli's Little League team when I saw Nina at the grocery store. She looked older, thinner, like someone who'd been carrying a weight she couldn't put down. Our eyes met across the produce section, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked over. "Hi, Victor. Nina. How's Eli?" "He's good. Made the honor roll last month. His batting average is up to .340. She smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one she'd worn during our marriage. He always was athletic. Gets it from his mother. We stood there for a moment. Two people who'd once shared everything, now struggling to find common ground in small talk about their son. I heard Armin moved to Oregon, she said finally. Did he? Started a new wellness center out there, sent me a postcard. I didn't respond to that. There wasn't anything to say. Victor, I want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. For what I put you through, what I put Eli through. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. The woman I'd fallen in love with, buried under the regret and consequences of her choices. We all make mistakes, Nina. The important thing is learning from them. Have you? Learned from them? Oh, I've learned that some fights are worth having, and that protecting the people you love isn't always pretty or fair or civilized. She nodded slowly. I should go. Give Eli my love? Of course. I watched her walk away, pushing her cart through the store like any other single woman doing her weekly shopping. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like someone who'd bet everything on the wrong horse and lost. But that wasn't my problem anymore. That night, I tucked Eli into bed and read him a chapter from his favorite book. When I turned off the light, he grabbed my hand. Dad? What's up, buddy? I'm glad you fought for me. I squeezed his hand in the darkness. Always will, Eli. That's what fathers do. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. I sat with him until he fell asleep, then went downstairs to my office and opened the safe where I kept my important documents. The divorce papers were there, along with the custody agreement and all the evidence I'd gathered during those dark months when my marriage was falling apart. At the bottom of the stack was a letter I'd written but never sent, a final message to Nina, explaining everything I'd done and why I'd done it. In the end, I'd decided that actions spoke louder than words, and that some victories were better left unexplained. I took the letter out and fed it into the paper shredder, watching it disappear in thin strips. The war was over. We'd won. And sometimes that's all the explanation victory needs.